Imagine you are like walking through the woods, right? And you hear this frantic, really heavy breathing.
Oh, that sounds a little creepy.
Yeah, a little bit. So you push through the bushes and you see someone just feverishly sawing down a tree. I mean, they are covered in sweat, muscles shaking, just completely exhausted.
Man, just hacking away at it.
Exactly. So you walk up and say, you look beat. Like, how long have you been at this? And they wipe their forehead and gasp, over 5 hours. It's really hard work.
Wow. 5 hours is a long time to be sawing.
Right. So you suggest, well, why don't you take a break for a few minutes and, sharpen that saw? I'm sure it would go a lot faster. And they just snap back at you. I don't have time to sharpen this saw. Can't you see? I'm too busy sawing.
It is such a visceral, almost painful image, isn't it?
It really is.
We can all picture that person violently hacking away with a dull blade,
Yeah.
getting absolutely nowhere, but they are just entirely convinced that sheer effort is the only answer.
Yeah. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone, because that exhausted, stubborn lumberjack, that is exactly how most of us are living our lives right now.
Sad but true.
Whether you are, an entrepreneur trying to scale a business or a student staring down finals or really just a professional trying to keep your head above water, we are obsessed with sawing and terrified of stopping to sharpen the blade.
We really are.
So today, we are extracting the core mechanics of a system that attempts to fix that exact problem. We are exploring a stack of sources, including corporate training manuals from Purdue University and Nucor, highly detailed summaries, and a really fascinating philosophical essay all centered on one of the most culturally dominant frameworks of the last 50 years, which is Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
And we are not just going to skim the surface here or recite a basic list of the habits. We're looking at the underlying machinery.
Right, the mechanics.
Exactly. Why do these concepts actually change human behavior?
Yeah.
We're going to look at the psychology of time management, the friction of human relationships, and eventually a secular critique that strips away the original religious packaging of these habits to see if the engine still runs on its own.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really understand why this framework blew up the way it did, selling over 40 million copies since 1989, we have to look at what it was pushing back against.
Yeah, the historical context is huge here.
Right. The sources show that for, the first 150 years of American history, success literature was dominated by what is called the character ethic. And this was all about core principles, integrity, humility, courage, patience.
But then, after World War I, there was this massive societal pivot.
Yeah.
The Industrial Revolution had fully taken hold, mass media was born, and the culture shifted heavily toward the personality ethic. This is the era of public relations.
This shiny stuff.
Exactly. The focus moved away from who you actually are and toward how you present yourself. It became about influence hacks, power dressing, and having a positive mental attitude. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People is the classic, probably most benign example of this.
Right.
But taken to its extreme, the personality ethic is really just manipulation.
Yeah.
It's learning the exact right way to smile or, the specific psychological trick to get someone to buy your product or agree with your pitch.
When I was reading through these materials, I kept picturing a tree.
Okay, a 3.
Yeah, so the top of the tree, the leaves, the branches, the part, everyone actually sees that is our personality, is our public relations. And sure, it makes the tree look nice, but the root system, the part buried in the dark where nobody is looking, that is our character.
Right, the foundation.
Exactly. The personality ethic essentially teaches us to tape green leaves onto dead branches and expect the tree to somehow thrive. You can learn all the communication hacks in the world, but if your roots are rotten, the first real storm is just going to blow you over.
That visualization hits on the exact flaw of modern hustle culture. The personality ethic is fundamentally obsessed with the harvest, but it entirely ignores the planting and the cultivating.
Yes, totally.
And the sources frame this dynamic through the concept of the PPC balance. Effectiveness isn't just about output, it's an equilibrium.
The goose and the golden egg.
Exactly. P stands for production, which is the desired results, the golden egg. And PC stands for production capability, which is the asset or the goose that actually produces the egg.
And we are just conditioned to worship the golden egg. Think about a startup that pushes its engineers to work 80-hour weeks for a year to launch a product.
Oh, yeah. Happens all the time.
Right. The P looks amazing, they get the product out, but what happens to the PC? The engineers burn out, they quit, they take all their institutional knowledge with them, and now the company can't even maintain the product they just built. They starved the goose to get a slightly bigger egg today.
Which is why the character ethic is so incredibly vital. It forces a long-term view. It demands that you nurture the asset. Whether that asset is like your physical health, your team's morale, or your marriage, you have to invest in the capability to produce good results over a lifetime.
So if the ultimate goal is to build those deep roots to nurture the goose, how does a person actually do that? The sources lay out a map called the maturity continuum, which tracks how human beings develop.
Right.
We all start out in a state of dependence. As infants, we physically need others to survive, but this can persist into adulthood emotionally or financially. The mindset of dependence is you. Like, you take care of me. You are to blame if I fail. You didn't come through for me.
And society tells us the escape hatch from that mindset is independence. This is the I paradigm. I am self-reliant. I can choose for myself. I am responsible for my own outcomes. The framework calls reaching this stage the private victory, which is achieved through self-mastery.
Okay, I have to pause here because I was reading this and thinking about how deeply our culture, especially Western corporate culture, absolutely idolizes the lone wolf.
Oh, completely.
The self-made billionaire, the solo founder, the independent maverick who just doesn't need anybody. We treat independence as the absolute summit of human development.
We really do.
But this framework places a third stage above it, interdependence, the we paradigm. This is the idea that we can combine our talents to create something vastly greater than we could alone. It's the public victory. And I'll be honest, my initial reaction was to resist that.
Really?
Why?
It almost sounds like a step backward, into relying on people again.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, look at how any complex, thriving system in reality operates. An ecosystem in nature, a high-performing surgical team, a healthy family. Total independence is actually a very fragile, limiting way to live.
Because the lone wolf starves when it gets injured.
Exactly. But the nuance here, and this is really the psychological linchpin of the whole model, is that you cannot skip independence to get to interdependence. Because if you try to partner with someone before you are truly self-reliant, you aren't actually forming a synergy. You're just creating codependence.
Yes.
You are basically using the other person to fill a void in your own character.
It is a strictly inside-out process. You cannot achieve the public victory of a great team or a great marriage until you have achieved the private victory of mastering yourself.
And mastering yourself starts with habit 1, be proactive. Which brings up a really incredible layer from one of our sources. We reviewed a secular critique of this entire framework by an author named Sean Powery. And he dives into the deep philosophical and scientific debate beneath this proactive mindset, specifically the debate around free will.
It's a heavy subject, but highly relevant. In neurology and philosophy, there is this massive ongoing debate about determinism.
Right.
Do humans actually possess absolute free will, like the ability to make purely unconditioned choices, or are our choices just the inevitable result of our genetics, our upbringing, our brain chemistry, and the environment we find ourselves in?
The old nature versus nurture plus physics.
Exactly. And a lot of modern science leans toward the latter, suggesting we are highly conditioned to simply react to stimuli.
But the critique highlights this brilliant piece of pragmatism. Let's say determinism is completely true. The critique notes that even if absolute free will is a scientific illusion, just believing you have free will is the most useful psychological tool a human being can possess.
It's a functional map.
Right. If you adopt the paradigm that you are the programmer of your own life, you stop waiting for circumstances to dictate your mood. By taking proactive responsibility, you neurologically position yourself to notice opportunities and shape reality.
It's about expanding the space between stimulus and response. Think about it. An animal feels hunger, that's the stimulus, and immediately hunts, the response. A proactive human being feels a surge of anger, the stimulus, pauses in that space, and chooses a measured, productive response.
That pause is everything.
It is the essence of character. Even if our choices are influenced by our past, acting as if we have total agency forces us out of the victim mindset.
Okay, so adopting the belief that I am the programmer of my life is great in theory. Like, I can sit in my living room on a Sunday and feel very empowered.
Sure, we all do.
But when Tuesday morning hits and my inbox is exploding, my boss is demanding a report, and my phone just won't stop buzzing, that grand philosophy usually goes completely out the window.
It evaporates.
So how does this system actually map to a messy, chaotic calendar? And that transitions us to habit 3. Put first things first, and the famous 4 quadrants of time management.
The Purdue University training manual we reviewed leans heavily on this because it is the operational engine of the whole system. The matrix divides every task in your life by 2 metrics. Is it urgent or not urgent? And is it important or not important?
So quadrant one is urgent and important. These are the crises. The kitchen is on fire. A client is threatening to pull a massive contract in an hour.
You have no choice. You must deal with these things.
Right. But the psychology here is dangerous. If you spend your whole life putting out fires in quadrant one, your brain gets addicted to the adrenaline. You become a crisis manager, and that inevitably leads to burnout.
Then you have quadrant 3, which is urgent but not important. This is the trickiest space. These are the constant interruptions, the chiming emails, the random Slack messages, the meetings that definitely could have been an email.
Oh, I hate those.
We all do. They demand your attention because they are loud and time-bound, but they don't actually move the needle on your long-term goals.
This is where the illusion of productivity happens. Like you spend 10 hours in quadrant 3 checking off 40 minor tasks, and you go home exhausted, feeling like you worked incredibly hard. But a year later, your life hasn't improved at all. You were busy, but you weren't effective.
Right.
And then, when Q1 and Q3 completely drain you, you escape to quadrant 4, which is not urgent and not important. Mindless busy work, doom scrolling on social media for 3 hours. It's purely an anesthetic for the burnout.
Which leaves the final space, quadrant 2. Not urgent, but important.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The Purdue source calls quadrant 2 the quadrant of quality. This is where the actual magic happens. This is long-term strategic planning. It is studying and upskilling. It's preventative health care, like actually going to the gym.
Imagine that.
Right. It is spending unstructured time building deep relationships.
But look at the neurological challenge here. Because Q2 activities are not urgent, there is no external pressure forcing you to do them. And there is no immediate dopamine hit when you start. Nobody is going to yell on you if you don't write your personal mission statement today. You won't get fired if you skip your morning run.
It takes immense willpower to ignore the screaming demands of Q3 to focus on the quiet importance of Q2. But the insight from the sources is that spending time in quadrant 2 is the only way to shrink quadrant 1.
Exactly.
If you do preventative maintenance on your car, which is Q2, your engine doesn't blow up on the highway, which is Q1. By investing in the character ethic, you literally prevent the fires before they ever start.
You are nurturing the goose. That is self-mastery. That is the private victory. But of course, we don't live in a vacuum. You eventually have to interact with a world full of other people who are, let's face it, likely trapped in their own urgent crises.
Which brings us to the public victory and the leap to interdependence. To explain how human relationships actually function mechanically, the sources introduce this metaphor of the emotional bank account. The training manual from Nucor Buildings Group really stresses this for their corporate teams. The EBA is a ledger that measures the exact amount of trust that exists in any given relationship.
Right, and every interaction you have with someone is either a deposit or a withdrawal. Deposits are acts of genuine kindness, keeping promises, clarifying expectations up front so there are no surprises, and sincerely apologizing when you make a mistake.
And withdrawals are the exact opposite.
Exactly. Unkindness, breaking commitments, holding grudges, or bad-mouthing people behind their backs.
And the state of that bank balance dictates the speed and quality of your communication. Think about it. If you have a massive EBA balance with a colleague, trust is incredibly high. You can stumble over your words, you can send a brief, unpolished email, and they still understand your intent. They give you the benefit of the doubt.
Because the communication is fast and frictionless.
But if the account is overdrawn, trust is zero. At that point, every single word you say is scrutinized for hidden meanings. You are walking on eggshells. You have to write a 5-paragraph email just to explain a minor decision because you are terrified they will take it the wrong way.
The friction in a low-trust environment is an invisible tax that just slows everything down and drains everyone's energy.
Okay, I'll be honest. Reading this made me wonder, can I game this?
What do you mean?
Like, let's say I know I have to deliver some really harsh feedback to my team next month, or I want to push through a selfish project. Can I just artificially inflate the account, bring donuts every Friday for a month, hand out a bunch of strategic compliments, and buy enough goodwill to cover the planned withdrawal?
It is such a common human instinct to try and hack the system. But the Nucor materials explicitly warn that emotional counterfeits are actually massive withdrawals.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Human beings are incredibly perceptive. We can sense when someone is using the tools of the personality ethic to manipulate us. If you apologize but it lacks sincerity, the other person registers it as a withdrawal.
So the EBA isn't a currency you hoard so you can spend it on being difficult later. It only works if the deposits are authentic. It demands actual character.
What's fascinating here is how this ties directly into habit 5, Seek first to understand, then to be understood. The book summaries we reviewed link this habit all the way back to ancient Greek philosophy, specifically the progression of ethos, pathos, and logos.
Right. So ethos is your personal credibility. In this framework, ethos literally is your emotional bank account balance. It's the baseline trust you bring to the table. Pathos is empathy. It's the emotional alignment. It is demonstrating that you genuinely understand the other person's feelings and perspective. And finally, logos is the logic, the reasoning, the actual solution you are proposing.
The sequence is absolutely non-negotiable. Ethos, pathos, logos, character connection, and then logic.
I am so guilty of getting this wrong.
Oh, we all are.
No, seriously, if someone comes to me with a problem, a colleague, a friend, my partner, and they are upset, my brain immediately jumps to logos. I want to fix it. I start laying out the logical steps to solve the issue. But because I haven't established pathos, because I haven't taken the time to truly listen and validate their emotional reality first, they completely reject my logic. It just feels dismissive.
And neurologically, that is exactly what is happening. When someone is emotionally hijacked, their amygdala is firing. They literally cannot process high-level logic until they feel safe and understood.
Yeah.
By seeking first to understand, you are soothing that emotional center. You build the pathos, which opens the door for the logos to actually be heard.
So we've built the deep character roots. We've mastered our time in quadrant 2. We've built high-trust emotional bank accounts to reach interdependence. How do you keep this entire system from eventually breaking down under the wear and tear of everyday life?
Well, you have to go back to the guy in the woods.
You have to sharpen the saw.
Exactly. This is habit 7, the habit of continuous renewal. It requires intentional, regular investment in 4 dimensions of your life. Physical, which
Yeah.
is your body. Social and emotional, your heart. Mental, your mind. And spiritual, which is your core values or inner peace.
Right. If you neglect any of these, you are degrading your production capability. The Happy Manager source also briefly touches on an evolution of this framework, the 8th habit, which moves beyond mere effectiveness into greatness, defining it as finding your unique voice and inspiring others to find theirs. It's really about leaving a legacy of significance. So, what does this all mean? When you step back and look at the entire architecture of the system, where did these principles actually come from? Because the sources reveal a pretty fascinating backstory.
They do.
Stephen Covey was a deeply committed Mormon. The 7 habits are essentially a secularized translation of his religious teachings, tracing back to a book he wrote for a Mormon audience called The Divine Center. In his view, these habits are natural laws authored by God.
This raises an important question, and it is the crux of the critique by Sean Powery. For a secular reader, encountering a framework that eventually points to a divine creator can feel like a philosophical roadblock. Powery notes that Covey sometimes conflates secularism with cynicism, but the critique argues brilliantly that you don't need a deity to explain the validity of these principles.
Right, and just to be clear for everyone listening, we are not taking sides on any religious or political viewpoints here. We are just looking at what the texts say.
Absolutely. The critique suggests that a principle like honesty or proactive responsibility is simply a mental map. The human brain is a pattern recognition machine. Over thousands of years of evolution and social development, we have observed that certain behaviors yield thriving communities and certain behaviors destroy them.
Just as physics maps the laws of motion and biology maps the laws of nutrition, the 7 habits map the laws of human effectiveness.
Exactly. If you eat processed garbage, your body breaks down. If you constantly break promises, your relationships break down. It is simply cause and effect.
Reality is the terrain, and these habits are just an incredibly accurate map of that terrain. It is exactly like gravity. You don't have to agree on the theological or cosmic origins of gravity to know that if you step off a ledge, you are going to fall.
Very true.
What is so compelling is that both perspectives arise at the exact same conclusion. The mechanics are sound. The system works because it aligns with reality, not with superficial hacks.
It demands that we abandon the cheap facade of the personality ethic and do the quiet, unglamorous work of building our character.
As we wrap up this deep dive, let's take a look at the journey you have just been on. We have traveled from the fragile, taped-on leaves of public relations down into the deep, sustaining roots of actual integrity. We've mapped the escape from the helplessness of dependence, forged through the discipline of independence, and arrived at the ultimate goal of interdependent synergy. You have seen the blueprint.
And as we leave you today, I want you to consider your own calendar. We spend so much of our precious time reacting to Quadrant 1, putting out the urgent fires, dealing with the crises that are screaming right in front of us. But look closely at your own life right now.
Yeah.
What is your ultimate quadrant 2 activity? What is that vital long-term goal, that crucial relationship, or that fundamental health habit you have been neglecting simply because it isn't screaming for your attention today?
And more importantly, what is the internal paradigm holding you back from making it your first priority? What is the story you are telling yourself? Are you telling yourself you just don't have the time to plan, to rest, to build trust? Because if you are, you might just be the person in the woods violently hacking away at a tree, swearing you are way too busy to stop and sharpen the saw. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.